So now, fast forward to my third. And this time around, it was a little bit different because there was so many things going on in my life. At that time, with my other two, we were staying with family. So we were trying to save to buy a house. We went there and we saved money to get our house. So now, third baby, we have our home, a lot more responsibilities. Not that you don't have that much responsibility being, with your other children, but I felt like now it was a lot of pressure on me. This is, you're pregnant, you still need to take care of two other kids and make sure that everything is good. And it's also pressure on your husband, right? Hopefully you have a partner that is as caring as mine, that wants everything to go well. So we moved here, we didn't have any family. That was one thing. I found out that I was pregnant January 15th. And the reason I know that is because one of my best friends, we had her 30th birthday party. I did not know we were enjoying ourselves. And I was feeling like, wait a minute, something seems like off. I'm feeling really moody, but it could be that my period is coming. Like, I'm not too sure. So once they all left, my husband was like, did you get your period yet? And I was like, no. And he was like, maybe you should take a test. And I was like, no, I'm not pregnant, because we had a wedding to go to. So we were working out. I was juicing. Like, I was trying to lose weight. I was feeling good. Of course, that's when you get pregnant, right? So I find out, yep, I am pregnant. And I was so happy. I was so excited, but at the same time, I was kind of terrified. And the reason why was because, like I said before, I moved from New York to North Carolina, and now I need to find a new OBGYN. I need to find a good hospital. I know that I'm higher risk because this is my third C-section, or I could find somebody that will allow me to do a VBAC. So what I do is I get online, I start researching. Again, I don't have family here. I don't have a lot of friends here. So it was hard for me to ask around. So I started going online and researching, and I started researching the top doctors in my area. So I found one, and she actually was booked up, like no more appointments. And I was like, no, why? So I found another partner of hers in the same practice, and I made an appointment with him. And the reason why I did was because they said that they would allow VBACs, or that they were pro VBACs, right? Vaginal birth after cesarean. That's what a VBAC stands for. So now I go into the office, I am going through all the motions, and I just, I told him I have a ton of questions because I did move. This is my first time with you. Like, I'm a little bit nervous. I want to know that I'm safe. And he was the best doctor. So I felt like I went from one to the next, like great hands. He sat there and he talked to me about anything I wanted to talk to him about, and he did not rush me. He sat me down and he answered all my questions, which made me feel so comfortable. And he did say that I could have a VBAC. He said that you would be able to have a VBAC, but the best case scenario would be that at 38, 39 weeks, 37 or 38 weeks, you come in here naturally in labor, naturally in labor, and you would be able to, everything goes well, that's fine. He said you have a history of larger babies. First was 8 pounds 9 ounces, the second one was 9 pounds. So he was like, more than likely you will have another larger baby. So that puts a lot of pressure on your incision area, which in turn could cause a uterine rupture. So it's he said the more C-sections you have, the higher the risk. You had two, and you want to do a VBAC. So the chances of you going to your due date are a lot slimmer. So he said if that was the case, I could definitely VBAC. So I was like, yes, I feel great. Like, okay, I'm going to try, at least he's telling me I can. I have an option. So I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great, and I'm going through all the motions. I had a really bad morning sickness, things like that. And then at the same time, life is still going, right? So I'm still working and all of this stuff. And all of a sudden at 12 weeks, I had a large bleed. So I was just in the kitchen. I'll never forget, because I was in the kitchen and I'm just I felt like a gush, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? Oh my God. And I ran to the bathroom. I kind of knew already. And when I sat on the toilet, I mean, not to be super graphic, it just came down. And at that point, I was I've had a miscarriage before between my first and second. So I kind of knew what that felt like. I was feeling cramps. I had the blood coming, and I was really kind of devastated, but at the same time I had to remain strong because my kids were there and I didn't want them to know anything. And they were so excited about having a brother or a sister, having another sibling. So I just called my mom and said this happened, and she was like, go lay down, put your feet up, you never know what's going on, right? And I was like, Mom, I know what it is, I should just go to the doctor because I'm further along. I don't know what they're gonna tell me. So I call my husband and I'm like, we have this issue, this happened, can you come home? Can you take me to the doctor, to the urgent care they had? My OB/GYN was closed. They sent me to their urgent care that they have, which is also a really great office. So I'm there, and the whole time during the ride, I'm just kind of trying to stay positive, but also at the same time preparing for the worst. I get to the OB urgent care, and they tell me, okay, I had a wonderful nurse practitioner who was like, don't be afraid, don't be scared, stay positive, you never know. A lot of the times it could be a miscarriage, but there's also times where there are situations where it is not. So, just be positive. So now she's checking me and everything. She's asking me, was there anything, did I fall or anything like that? I did not. So now she's checking me, and then the sonographer comes in and she's gonna do my sonogram. So at that point, I'm really terrified. I did not want to look. I was like, if the baby is, has passed, I don't want to see it, I don't want to see anything. But luckily enough, they did the ultrasound and they saw that he was fine. He was great. He was fine. I didn't know it was a he at this time, but I'm saying he because I know I have my son now. So he was fine and he was moving around. They told me I had a subchorionic hematoma, which is when your placenta, or at that time it was a yolk sac, kind of separates from the uterus and has a pocket of blood pooling there. I'm not sure if that's the exact thing, but that's what I was told. And so that's what happened. So I went home, I put my feet up, and for the next couple of weeks I did have a bleed. So it was something that was kind of ongoing. It wasn't just that day. And my baby is crying, so I'll be right back. We get to 19 weeks and we're doing I believe it's the anatomy scan that we're doing at that point, and the doctor, and I could also find out, so I believe I was 20 weeks, and so I could also find out that the sex of the baby. So it was closer to Mother's Day, I remember this. So we found out the sex of the baby, but I also found out in that sonogram was that my placenta was covering my cervix. So I did not know what that meant until I went in. After I went to the ultrasound tech, I went in with the doctor and he explained that I had placenta previa. When I found out I had placenta previa, I was like, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean at this point, right? And he basically said that you could have a chance of it as your uterus grows. Your placenta can move. It could travel to the top or to the side and not completely cover your cervix. But at this point right now, it's a complete placenta previa. But, you still have time for it to move. So I said, okay, what does that mean still? And he said, you could be at a greater risk of bleeding during your pregnancy. And also too, that you cannot have a vaginal delivery because there's no way of the baby getting out. You can't deliver the placenta before you deliver the baby. That's its lifeline. So at that point, I was really down. I was sad, and I want to say I was just super emotional because I was like, okay, now I have even more risks because now I have to trust that this new doctor is going to do C-section. And that's something I didn't want. I wanted to just kind of labor naturally, more so because I felt like there were less complications that way. I don't know, I could be wrong, but that's what I believed, and I was really excited about that, and I wanted that experience. So anyway, fast forward, I'm going through, and every week, now I become more of a high risk pregnancy. If you hear, that is the baby, and I'm going to introduce you to him at the end. But yes, so I started going to a high risk doctor as well as my OBGYN, and they're doing sonograms, and every sonogram it seems like the placenta is not moving. And at one point, I think it was 24 weeks, they told me that I had a possible accreta. So now I'm starting to research on my own. I'm asking the doctor a bajillion questions, and he said that basically with placenta accreta, it's when your placenta starts to attach to the uterus, and he said it's a higher risk for women who've had multiple C-sections because your placenta likes to kind of gravitate towards that scar and just kind of grow into the scar that you have there in your uterus. So now I'm like really nervous, and I'm asking, what does that mean? And they were saying to me, the doctor said, well, worst case scenario, you would have to have a partial hysterectomy or a hysterectomy. And I'm 31. Do I want to have more kids? Probably not. But do I want you to just take my uterus? No. So that's scary. That's even more scarier to me. I'm like, oh my God, all of this, new doctor, new state, new hospital, like everything is new to me right now. And I did not have this experience before. So I started to notice that like I had a lot of pressure throughout the weeks of being pregnant. So I'm feeling a ton of pressure, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's hard. It was harder than my other two. I felt like I was just pulling down. Like, I don't know, I guess all the weight was there. Like, you have your placenta, you have the baby, everything was there. And I'm going through the motions, and at the same time, I feel like I'm so stressed. I start breaking out everywhere. My chest was full of acne. Like full. I still have some scars. I'm trying to get rid of it. And I had like acne all the way through here. It was like hormonal. And I just felt not myself. So I'm going through it, and the placenta's not moving. So now I know for sure it is placenta previa. But now they are monitoring me for the accreta. They continue to monitor me. It becomes, they tell me that now I have to have the baby at 37 weeks. And I am just like, what else? What else? 36 to 37 weeks. So he would be, premature. It wouldn't be as bad, he said. It's not like you're fully premature. He said if you bleed at all, go straight to the hospital, because that was the greatest risk. That I could have a baby that was severely premature because I would bleed from the placenta pushing down on the cervix. I had not gone into labor before with the other two, so I was being positive that I wouldn't go into labor and I wouldn't cause any bleeds because of that. It wouldn't cause any bleeds because of that, but he did say that it was a possibility. So now we get down to 34 weeks, and they say, it is possible that you will have a hysterectomy. We just need to know if you want that, just you consent to having a hysterectomy, or what is it exactly? Would you want me to salvage it? It really just depends on if you want to have any more kids. So I said to him, it took me a long time. I talked to my husband and everything like that, and I said, I don't want to have a hysterectomy. If there's any way that you could salvage my uterus, please do. And he said, hopefully we don't have to even get to that point. And I was like, hopefully you're right, because I don't want to get to that point. So now it's 36 and a half weeks. August 28th is when my son was born, August 28th, 2018. And we get into the hospital. It's early morning. I'm there. I am fully nervous at this point. I am panicked to no end. I think I cried for weeks before this date. And it was so hard for me to know that there was a possibility that this was super high risk, and they said it would be high risk and that they would have, you know, blood there in case I would need a transfusion, because it was more of a complicated C-section because of the placenta previa and the possible placenta accreta. So they had to take all the measures that they did, and I'm so thankful to my doctors for doing that, because they, instead of doing the regular OBG OR room where they usually do C-sections, I was on the main operating floor just in case anything could go wrong, anything would go wrong. So now I'm being prepped. This time around, the spinal was a lot easier. I don't know why. I was so nervous. Let me just tell you that I was extra nervous. But the anesthesiologist was awesome, and he did it so quickly I didn't even feel it, honestly. Whereas the other two, I did feel it. But then it started to get to the point where he was like, okay, do you feel this? So what they do, just to give you a little bit of a background, if you are going to have a C-section, you get prepped in triage. You get your IV, they talk you through it, they ask you all these questions. It's good to know your blood type, any family history, anything like that, any history. Be honest, tell them, because your life is in their hands. So then you have a scheduled time. They walk you down, or they wheel you down to the operating room. So now you're in the operating room, and like I said, everybody's kind of nonchalant. They're all like, hey, how are you? Everybody was really warm. They were like, you know, you're gonna be great. Are you ready for baby? Are you excited? And I'm like, yes, I'm excited, but I'm really nervous. And you know, I'm being honest with them, and I'm like, you know, I'm nervous. I'm nervous about the spinal. Please be gentle. And they were like, don't worry, you're in good hands. You have one of the top anesthesiologists here. You get there, they tell you to lean forward and not to move. I'm like, you don't move. Like, are you kidding me? Like, don't move. It's like, it's that easy. Oh yeah, sure. Just go ahead. Do you want to stick another one in my back? Like, you're good? Okay. So whatever. So then you lean forward, you hold a pillow, or you hold a nurse. The doctor finds the spot in your back, and he will, you know, first you'll feel something like a bee sting, and then you'll feel a little bit of pressure. So the bee sting is to numb the area. Pressure is the actual spinal. At that point, you start to feel really numb. You feel incredibly numb. You start to feel really warm. The operating room is so cold that you start feeling warm, and you're like, what's going on, right? And then you start to lose feeling pretty much. You could feel certain things, but it's more of a sensation than a pain or any type of really sharp, what do I want to say? Then, so once they do the spinal, they put you straight onto the operating table, which is so thin, it's so small. You're like, I'm gonna fall off, I'm huge. Like, I can't believe you're putting me on this tiny thing. But you're laying there, and they tilt you to the left or the right, I can't remember, but you do get tilted kind of. So now you feel like you're just gonna fall off. Then they do all those tests to see if you feel anything. Then they start setting up the operating, you know, the cloth, whatever. I don't know, what's the sheet. They put up the sheet. So now at this point, I'm like, okay, it's time. Like, we're ready to go. And they place the catheter in, and that at that time when you're numb, so you don't really feel everything. You do feel the sensation, but you don't feel any pain or anything like that. So again, you do feel sensations. Don't be afraid if you're feeling anything. So now we're going through it, and I'm feeling so much more than before. And my husband comes in at this point, and I'm like, I'm feeling a lot. Like, not I'm feeling the pain, but I'm feeling so much more pressure, and I'm hearing a lot of things. You hear a lot of things in the operating room. Like, you hear like you start hearing them cut like through layers. And then the doctor's talking to me at the same time. He's like, you have a lot of scar tissue, like a lot of scar tissue, and which is prolonging the process. And in that time, as you know, you're being operated on, so you're losing blood. So now you're being operated on, they're cutting, and then, you know, I feel like I'm there forever at this point. And the doctor's like, okay, now we're gonna get ready. And I had asked, because I've never been able to experience seeing my child just, you know, be born. I had asked that they put a clear sheet, or that they dropped the sheet when the baby was going to be born. So they said that they could put that clear plastic. And I was able to see him. Once he came out all dirty, I heard him cry, and it was such a nice feeling, because I didn't have that with the other two. At least I was able to see that. I was the first one to see him. You know, I felt like I didn't get that with my other two, because they were behind a sheet, and then I saw them when they came around. So it was beautiful. I loved it. I was so happy to hear his little cry. I was so happy to see him. To me, he looked big, but at the same time, he looked really tiny. And the NICU was in there because, again, he was premature. They had given me, prior to this, steroid shots to develop his lungs. So I did that 2 rounds before, I think a couple of days before the C-section. And so they came in and then they said, Mom, everything is fine. And that's all I needed to hear, honestly. You could have just wheeled me out of there and I would have been fine. So then at that point, you know, they clean him up, they make sure he's okay, they give him to Dad, now they come and they let me give him a kiss. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy to see him. You know, I'm just like, I'm so glad that he's okay. So now they are working. I said I wasn't gonna get emotional during this, so I'm gonna try not to. Okay, so then they are, you know, they keep on working on me. They take Dad and the baby out, and during the whole pushing portion, I told the anesthesiologist, like, I feel this and I'm feeling really nauseous. And they were like, okay, we'll give you some more medication. So they give it to me. I stop feeling nauseous. But then once everything is done and the baby is out and I'm feeling way nauseous, like, oh my God, it's bad. I was just feeling out of it. And I told him, yeah, that's how I felt. And then I told him, I was like, I feel really nauseous. And he was like, okay. And then he gave me something and I was like, and I also feel like I'm feeling things now. And he was like, you're feeling things? Like, he was like, you're feeling something? And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling it. So he gave me some more medication, and that medication made me feel like I was in astral world. Like, I did not know what was going on. And I started to throw up. So I started throwing up, I'm throwing up, and then I started to feel like I was going to black out, right? And I am like a faithful person, so a spiritual person, and I started to feel like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, like, as I'm feeling the room spinning, something just like stops and tells me, like, to be strong, because you have your boys to take care of, right? So I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right. So then I like refocus in. So, you know, having faith is really big, and I just kind of refocused in, and I got my mind clear again, right? And then now I go into the recovery area, and the nurse is like pushing down on my stomach. I feel like, you know, they do that with the other prior to C-sections, but I feel like they were really light about it at that time. Sorry guys. I felt like they were really soft and gentle, and they just want to make sure that there's no like huge clots coming out. So she was like really pushing down. I don't know if it's because it was my third. They try to check that your uterus is starting to shrink, right? So she's pushing down. I feel like little, you know, like you're gonna feel gush coming out, whatever. So, and then I'm like feeling so nauseous, and I asked her, can I drink something? And she was like, okay, I could give you some ginger ale. So she's giving me ginger ale. I'm so thirsty. I'm like hungry because you don't get to eat. And I drank and everything. And then now I'm trying to rest. I'm like sleeping. I felt really, really weak, more than before with the other two. So I go upstairs. Now they have my room ready, and my mom and the kids are there, and my husband is there. And for some reason, I was not really excited And it's not that I wasn't excited to see my family, but I kind of like had a feeling that something wasn't right, and I didn't want them to see me like that. That's just the type of person I am. So I look at my husband and I'm like, you know, and I'm really out of it. Like, you would think that it wasn't me. That's what my son said. He was like, you look so tired, Mom. So now I'm there, and again, the nurses are pushing down to check that the uterus is shrinking, and all of a sudden she pushes down, and a gush, I feel like a gallon of milk just spilled out, right? And I feel clots like coming also. And she immediately just like hit the emergency button. And when I tell you that I looked at my husband, because I did not want my mom to freak out and I didn't want the kids to get scared, I looked at him and I was like, I think you should leave now. And he was like he didn't know what to do. And I was like, you should leave now. And he was like, okay. So they get out and they're starting to leave, and I'm like, come on guys, go, like it's time to go. Like, you know, I didn't want them to know what was going on. I knew what was gonna happen because I just had this feeling, overwhelming feeling. Again, I was so weak, I couldn't even like get up or move. I was breastfeeding my son and I was feeling contractions, like I never felt a contraction because I never went to labor, like I said. These were contractions, boy. And I was like, you know what, props to every woman who's went through that whole, God bless you. So I was feeling those contractions, like whew, they were tight, they were strong. And then that's when I had that bleed. So as I was telling the nurse, I'm like feeling these really bad contractions. She's like, that's good. Like, that's good. You want your uterus to start shrinking. And so that's what's happening. I'm feeling them. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take this. Like, this is, you know, I'm gonna be strong, and I'm doing it. And then I get that gush, and then I tell them to like leave. So they're leaving. As they're leaving, all these nurses from the floor are coming into my room, and they right away come and take my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was like 60/30 or 70/30, something crazy that it is ridiculous. And they were like, oh my God. So they called the doctor. The doctor comes in and she's ordering blood right away. She was like, we had blood for you, don't worry. We figured something like this could happen. And so I ended up getting a blood transfusion. And the hardest part, and this is the most graphic, so if you don't want to hear it, just exit out, was that I wasn't, because my doctor explained to me that my uterus was so thin from having the prior C-sections and the weight from the placenta being low that I had a window. So that window basically means like he could like see through to the baby. And that was causing the blood to pool there and clot in that area. So that when she pushed down, it kind of came out of that little balloon sac, right? So so after that, so he explained that to me, and he was like, you know, that there's, you know, clots forming that you don't want in your body. So the hardest part about this whole thing was he started to manually like stick his hand in there and pull out clots with his hand. So imagine that you just went through a C-section, the pain of that swelling. They're pushing down on your stomach in the same spot every 30 minutes, I want to say. Sometimes maybe every 15. And then your doctor comes in and is like pulling out these clots, like digging in to pull it out, and he's pushing down at the same time because he's trying to get to your cervix. It was horrible. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. Nonetheless, I was so thankful at the same time that he was like, he knew what to do, and it wasn't just a situation where it was like, oh my God, what do we do? I don't know. So he was on it. He knew what to do. He was doing what he had to do. It was traumatic for me, yes, but would it be more traumatic if I wasn't here, or if, you know, it was something way more extra and I had to have another transfusion, or I had to go back into the operating room? It would have been way more traumatic for me and my family. So the whole time my husband was there, and he was just like looking at me. Thank God my mom was with the kids, and he was just looking at me like he didn't want to look at me because he didn't want to see what was going on. And after a while, I guess the bleeding started to get slower and I was able to sleep. So that was for 20, I want to say after the C-section, it happened that entire day of the C-section. He was born at 12:10. So after that, until the next morning, until like 4 in the morning, they were doing that. And then after that, I was able to rest. But mind you, I haven't gotten out of the bed since I had the C-section. And usually within an hour or so, you're up and you're encouraged to walk. So now I'm starting to get like gas pains and things like that. And it was tough. It was a tough experience. And after that, I was in recovery mode and I did really great. I got up. I didn't feel like getting up, but I got up and I walked around and my nurse was amazing. I only wanted to breastfeed, so he was starting to lose weight, and that's normal. But on top of all of this, he started to lose weight, and I was supposed to go home Friday, and the nurse practitioner came in and told me, you know, he's dropped a significant amount of weight. We can't let him go. You know, he's gonna have to stay. And I'm like, I started crying right away. Literally, when she said that, I started crying, and my mom was there and she starts crying. The whole hospital room started crying at that point. And I was like, I can't leave him. And she was like, oh no, honey, don't worry, because I was discharged. And she was like, don't worry, we'll have you stay with him. They were awesome. And that night my milk came in and I fed him and he gained, I want to say 8 ounces, 10 ounces, something crazy. And they were like, wow, you did such a great job. I was on a mission to bring him home. So Saturday, instead of Friday, Saturday he came home. And my husband really, my mom was awesome. My husband was really awesome. And they like made me feel so comfortable and confident. And they were like, you could do it. Just don't stress out and things like that. And that's a big important thing. Don't be so down on yourself. Don't stress, because that will hold back your milk as well. So that was my experience, and I will introduce you to him. This is Mr. Carter. He's a little bit grumpy right now. He's sleepy, but yeah, he's my little cutie pie, patootie pie, and he's like, oh, I'm awake, I'm ready. Say hi. Hi. But so thank you so much for hearing out this story. If you've been through a C-section, or you've had more than one C-section, or you are going to, you know that you are a candidate for having a C-section, thank you so much for watching. Let me know how you feel down below. Make sure that you like this video, and please subscribe, join my family here. I'd love to have you guys. I love seeing my family grow, and thank you so much for you guys who have subscribed even without me posting. I am excited to be back, and I will have more makeup content. I love doing makeup because it kind of gets me out of my motherly element, because you love being a mom, but you also love being your old self and yourself, right? So you want to try to do something fun, which is what I want to do on this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.